Okay. Hello, Vibers. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is Northern Vibe. I am Matthew Maloney. Really appreciating you tuning in this afternoon. Now, there is a rule with podcasting. Show, don't tell. So what I'm going to do is rather than doing an introduction, I'm going to show you who I'm talking to this afternoon.
Tornado coming down. It's roaring. It's loud. Right now, I need to be going, and this was my mistake. Because I wasn't really contemplating or processing what was actually happening. It was moving so fast. I said nearly 100 kilometers an hour. Fast moving day, dangerous day. Trees starting to go right in front of me here. It's hanging on for dear life. RFD's now hitting us. It's hitting up the front of the car. It's coming around left to right. Starting to rip the bonnet off the car, but it doesn't, which was fantastic. Tornadoes in the field there. It's just back here. Close range tornado, multi-vortex. So there's multiple vortices wrapping around the actual tornadic circulation. These power poles go, these trees go, all that gets ripped out. It's just shredded. Right here, this is what we call a 0 meter. We're 0 meters away from the tornado. The outskirts of it are actually starting to hit us. Some of these little tendrils are starting to come onto us.
Well, as you can tell, I'm speaking to an Aussie storm chaser, the legendary Thomas Hinterdorfer. This is an edit of a full chat. The edit goes for a little bit under an hour, the full interview for 3 hours. It felt like 5 minutes when I was talking to him. I'll put the full interview out on YouTube later, but as I said, this is a shorter edit of an interview. You're going to see a fair bit of footage like this and exciting parts. But what I've really tried to do in this interview and with the edit is to focus on what's going on in Tom's head. Now, he's a really interesting chap. Unassuming, and I know he won't mind me saying this, but pretty geeky. But he's also got massive cojones. He's this strange mix of nerd and superhero. Now, if you want to understand what motivates this chaser and rider of storms, and just really get into the mind of someone who both loves excitement and has, quite frankly, a very high intelligence as well, you'll really love this. Now, for obvious reasons, I've called this one Storm Rider. Look, I had a very brief conversation with you on the phone, obviously, to organise this interview, and you seem like a normal guy. Why are you risking your life chasing extreme weather events, fires, and God knows what else? I mean, anyone else would kind of like be scratching their head.
I scratch my head sometimes too. It's one of those things that I grew up loving. I learned about. I still remember I learned about it in grade 3 and 4, back in my very first school, and learned about radar. Learned about just even the real basics of weather, and for some reason it just stuck with me. And through the rest of my school, I kind of pushed it away a little bit. It wasn't like the cool thing. It wasn't something that a lot of people ever spoke about. Like you spoke about the weather to people, and it was just like, eh. I was like, well, I sit there. I'm gaming every night with my friends and stuff, and I actually had the radar like right there. I'm watching storms come in and stuff, and I'd even go away from the games and go look at the storms and whatever, and that passion kept growing until I then spoke to careers counselors and stuff, and they sort of pushed me in the direction that meteorology is an actual thing, and it's more than just being a TV presenter. Not downgrading that at all, but that's where I thought that's what your end goal is, TV presenter.
Yeah.
I didn't actually see that there was this whole other aspect of forecasting, chasing, and then social media became such a massive thing in the whole weather world, through YouTube and now TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, all these different avenues where we can share our work. And obviously that just then helped continue the domino effect of me wanting to be more into weather and loving this kind of unique job.
Mate, and it is, and I mean this in a respectful way when I make the observation, it's like not even geek squared, it's like geek cubed. So you're
Yeah,
gaming,
it is.
you'd be giving up gaming to watch the weather and
Yeah,
doing social media. That's like get cute, bro. That's like right there.
yeah, it definitely felt geeky. But now I am weirdly enough finding the more unique and fun side of it. Or I have for a number of years now, but I'm really starting to be able to show that with people.
Well, see, the cool thing about this is we finally get to explain to other people and show other people, not just through an engaging conversation, about why we're passionate about these seemingly obscure, weird, fringe things. And I can tell you from the pleasure that I've had speaking to you and literally hundreds of other people now, like real enthusiasm is infectious. It doesn't matter what it is. If you start
It
passionately talking
is.
about
Yeah.
something, they just they love it. Like, you know, as soon as people do it. So I'd like you to tell us the coolest
Yeah.
stories. And while you're doing that, it's not just this was a cool thing, but it's why you liked it and what drove you to it. So if we can start running through that cool stuff.
This is just a little folder that I've got done up for media. It's got a few things in it. Um, but no, look, something I don't have in this folder right now. It's my very first proper storm encounter.
Well, tell us. Just I'm cool
Bring
for
you across a little bit more. So I'm looking at the middle of the screen. So the real storm, I suppose every storm chaser has these moments back when they were young. It's never when you're an adult, it's never when you're a teenager, it's always when you're young. Every storm chaser has their moment of this got me hooked. And for me, it was I had two separate ones. The first one I was really not clued into the whole meteorology thing. The second one I was kind of like, yeah, this is what I love. And the first one was I remember it was I lived back in North Brisbane. Both these were in the same house, and I remember telling Mum, "There's a hailstorm coming." She goes, "You have no idea what you're talking about. Like, there's a storm coming. How do you know it's a hailstorm? How do you know it's gonna?" I said, "It's gonna be bad. Like, we're gonna lose windows and stuff." She's like, "How do you know that?" I'm like, I was only about 9 years old, 8 years old, and I said, "Look, I know. I've looked at the radar today. I know." And she's like, "Okay, fine." I said, "Look, 10 minutes max." And she goes, "That's okay. I'll believe you because I'm your mother." um, and look, Mum's been very fantastic through all the years of my meteorology and storm chasing, which has been phenomenal. So has Dad, and that's another side thing, just off topic, that uh, the support we have, the support networks that we have as all chasers is so tight. It's so awesome. But anyway, Mum gave me the support and love and trust, and we got smashed. It was actually quite a nasty storm, and I didn't know back then how, I actually didn't realize that it had travelled from Warwick through Boona all the way up through Brisbane into North Brisbane over us, then up the Sunshine Coast. It was actually like a 7 hour long storm. I didn't know that at the time. I looked at radar and I knew what was coming, and that kind of triggered it for me because I was right. It wasn't. I actually felt like I knew something, even though I didn't. Looking back then now, I flipped it, but it got me hooked. And then that kind of led on to the next one, which is actually quite a famous storm now in Southeast Queensland. It's the Gap Storm from 2008. I was in middle school at the time, and I think it was November 16, 2008, somewhere around that stage. And obviously the suburb of the Gap got annihilated. It was like a war zone. It was declared a natural disaster. But I was in Albany Creek at the time, just northern suburb of Brisbane, and we copped it as well. And it was multiple severe storms that day that merged along a sea breeze front. They came up through Brisbane, Ipswich, and then through North Brisbane, and they just went to this other level of it was what we call a microburst. And these microbursts can kind of produce tornadic damage. They can produce, Category 3 cyclone damage, which is what the Gap saw that day. Winds were well over 180 kilometres an hour. We copped about 120 on the north side in Brisbane. We actually, I think, if you go by BOMS data, we had the heaviest rain rate from that event. Didn't cop any hail, which was weird. We were one of the only suburbs to not cop hail, but we did get 80 millimetres in 20 minutes. But I was outside in that. I stood outside. I was watching trees. We had a massive park behind us. Trees were just going down like toothpicks. Went around for, took the dog for a walk and stuff afterwards, and had a look at some of the damage. And there was trees on houses. There's roads completely cut. There were trees that were 2-3 feet wide, and they just toppled over. And I couldn't believe that. Like, that was my first real encounter of next level. There's severe, there's dangerous. This was next level. This was like, we're talking historic now. Anyone from that sort of region in Brisbane will remember the Gap Storm. If you weren't there during the Gap Storm, people will tell you about it. Even today, like, we're in our peak storm season at the moment, or we're coming out of the peak now towards the end of the storm season. This time of year, like, I'm focused on severe storms in Australia, cyclones, floods, fires, all of that severe chaotic weather I'm focused on. But when I'm not behind the desk, I'm actually studying the US for our trip. We go to the States every year for 3 years, and I'm learning stuff still for the States that is making me a better chaser. And that's something that is crazy with weather, that so many professions, there is a start and an end. You become the master. In weather, it is just constantly changing. There's really no storm that's like the other. There's so many that are comparable, but there's no storm that's identical. It's something that drives us, and it's an addiction that, you can go and chase what we do, like 83 days in a row or something in the States. It's like, well, you're going to see storms. Yeah, we end up chasing about 40 out of the 80 days. You get days off, you get travel days, all this other stuff. You end up getting on about 40 storm days, maybe 50, depending on how active the season is. Every one of those days is different. The storm just looks different every day. You can have the same looking day and they produce completely different things. And I mean, some of the most violent days in 2024, and I've got some videos of them. Some of those violent days produced 15, 20 tornadoes. I had friends in Iowa, or Nebraska and Iowa, on April 26, 2024, that got 15 tornadoes that day. There are some chases from back in 1999 on the Moore, Oklahoma tornado, the May 3rd, 1999 tornado that at the time was the strongest tornado on record. And they got 18 tornadoes that day. And I think that 13 or 14 were from the one storm. We've seen that set up since, and it hasn't produced that. So that's kind of the cool thing about weather, that it's never the same. It's always different. We're always learning. And that's what kind of keeps the passion alive, as you were mentioning before, with trying to have that infectious vibe about everything. You're addicted because it's never boring. Boring weather for us is fine and sunny. Like today, it's fine and sunny today. Today's finally, and it's like my first day off this whole season. I'm actually loving this. I don't think I've had a day since about mid-August where I haven't produced a storm map for Queensland. Like, normally you'll get 1 or 2 days here and there. It's heat wave going through the state. Everyone's fine, sunny and dry. Birdsville's 48 degrees. Rockhampton's 40, and it's just dry everywhere. Normally one or two of those days pop up. We actually haven't had it this year. Even now, we've got a dull week coming up for most of the state. We still have storms in the tropics every day. So it's one of those things that it can look the same on paper, but it's just not. Weather is just changing all the time. We're learning so much stuff. We see the footage of big pretty tornado on the news, big white tornado, big wide black tornado carving crazy damage. Yeah, that's the visual side. There's probably 200 to 270 degrees of that tornado you can't see. It's about a 90-degree window, basically from the east to the south. The drier the storm is, the more you can go around to like 180, and then probably even get some storms you can go around the whole storm. This is just a photo to start with.
Sure.
Photogenic tornado, violent tornado. Winds in this tornado were clocked at, I think, about 253, 257 miles per hour. So that's getting up over 400 kilometers an hour.
Yeah.
We were 100 yards from it, less. It went over where we were. Our only movement in that storm was to get out of its path and then go back into it. So that's what I talk about positioning, and that's where I'm trying to when people ask, I try and tell them, well, storm positioning matters because if we're anywhere other than where I'm standing right there in this photo, you don't see this tornado. There's everything behind that tornado, all that dark sky is rain and hail. And that rain and hail went for 20 miles. We actually went and sat in that rain and hail after the tornado had gone through because, well, we couldn't really chase anymore. The road network was kind of crap. We just sat in that rain and hail, tried to let it all go past and then go to dinner. But if you're north of that, so at this point, we're southwest. We actually started east of the tornado, let it come through us, and then this is on the southwest side. All of that was clear. So we had a really good view. That's our positioning win for the day. We positioned ourselves really well. Other people positioned themselves much better. They got it earlier on as well, which we didn't quite. But that's where I talk about positioning for people that are trying to do it for the first time. That this view matters more than you getting on the storm. Anyone can pick the storms. Storm Prediction Center do it. Tornado warning system in America is really advanced now, where they're getting 20-minute lead time sometimes for tornadoes, even longer. Most of the time, they're actually pretty quick to pull the trigger on a tornado warning. So if you're on the right storm, if you're on a tornado warning storm, it's now this view that you want. This is the one that you get the wall hanging shot. This is the view that you're going to talk about. This tornado is being spoken about as one of the tornadoes of 2024. And it actually happened on one of the dullest days. There was the lowest tornado potential that day, and we ended up getting one of the most violent tornadoes of the season just because of the way the environment interacted, all the little different components that we look for, wind boundaries and shear. And this storm just happened to sit in the right spot for an hour and produce this tornado. I do have so this is the start of it. Started out as this big, beautiful wedge. Multi-vortex. You can see there that it's all off to the right here, but you can actually start to see the tendrils coming down the bottom. All this stuff is raking around from the left to the right. It's just trying to pull all that dust in and just get bigger and bigger. And this was just looking straight west. It actually went straight over our location here. You can see a big bowl. And even right here, this is something we try and teach people, that you've got the funnel, kind of just looks like an upside down triangle.
Yeah.
But the base and the ground interaction is much bigger than what the funnel is. And sometimes people are like, well, it's just a funnel. It's not really actually touching the ground. A lot of the time, these are touching the ground when they're more than halfway to the ground as a funnel. And this is a perfect example of the tornadic winds are actually much bigger than the funnel, because the funnel is just moisture that's being condensed. That's all it is. This one in particular, you've got a bit of extra dust in it. That makes it a bit dustier, a bit prettier, a bit more visual. But in general, this tornado is much larger than what it actually looks like if you're just looking at the funnel. You can just see it all wrapping around. It's just trying to just pull all that dust in. It's just trying to condense harder and harder. And yeah, that tornado ended up producing a little bit of damage. I'll see. This is the other side of it. When it became a big white cone. So it went through multiple stages. You've got obviously the collar cloud coming around the top there, which kind of shrouded a little bit, but it does make it prettier. And again, it's gone straight over our location. We moved 100 meters down the road to get out of the way. We came back into where it was, and it's just this big fat tube that how it didn't level. I think there were about 10, 13 houses. How it didn't level them, we have no idea. It actually went in between them. I think the little vortex carousels that were going around the big tornado were, I think they were just dodging the houses. But see, this is addicting for us. We hate to see the damage. We hate to see people get hurt. But for the most part, this was on the ground for an hour. It was in an open field. It bent a couple of oil rigs, and that's about it. Caused some minor damage to houses, but I don't think any of the actual houses were damaged. I think it was more like the sheds on the outside, some fences, superficial things. Absolute beast of a tornado. That's one of the highlights of our 2024 season. I mean, and look, we're not just over there for
It's
tornadoes
if you
either.
don't mind me butting in, it's dangerous. Well, I mean,
It
I think
is.
this is really cool. Don't get me wrong, and I'm somewhat like
Yeah.
I'm parachutist. I've hang glided.
Yeah.
I've done all these sorts of things, but dude, that's dangerous. Like really dangerous.
I mean, it's regarded as top 10 most dangerous jobs in the world, and it's not number one, which damn, I can't flex that. We try and be as safe as possible. We really do. We've been hit. I'll straight out. We've been hit. We've been hit by. I think I've run over. I think I've been run over 7 times by a tornado.
Well, what
Most of
happened?
them.
I mean, do you get sucked up into Oz? Like I mean,
Not quite. No, not quite. It's. I mean, it's all different. A lot of it comes down to tornado strength, and a lot of the time we are intercepting the weaker tornadoes. Those winds are 140, 160, 200 k's an hour. They're very strong, obviously. Like that's wild winds, but from a tornado perspective, they're actually quite weak. I think even the weaker ones can push 100 to 150 k's an hour. I mean that's we get stronger storms in Australia when you think about that. Like our strongest storms in Australia produce bigger winds than that.
oh my god!
So yeah, that thing was just it was a
How big is that?
monster.
Like, I mean, that looks like something from the Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's even our radar of that day. You can see our location there, driving straight through that hook and that notch. But in terms of total size, it was not a big storm. I mean, even if I just zoomed out a little bit there on the radar, it's basically just between 2 towns. So in the distance of 2 towns, it's managed to go straight between them. All this stuff at the top, it's all just rain and hail. Our focus is obviously back down here with the tornado. But it's not a big storm. It just, obviously, when you're sitting right under it is quite big. I remember yelling at my mate then and just being like, pull over, pull over, pull over. He's like, why? He's like, do you see the tornado? I said, no, I see structure of the year. So yeah, it can be a bit crazy like that. That was some of our first encounters with driving through tornadoes. And I remember last year, or 2023, driving through a tornado in Clarkson, Nebraska. Again, don't even have any footage of it. We're actually really frustrated that day because we kept missing everything. It was just one of those days we couldn't position ourselves right. And every chaser has them. You're doing the right thing. It's just you're either 15 minutes behind the 8 ball or you're just not on the right storm. There's so many storms to pick from. If you've got the whole state of Oklahoma filled in storms, there's maybe only 5 or 6 on a general day that are producing tornadoes. You could very easily not be on one of them. So we've got the Villisca tornado here, which is we actually intercepted 2 tornadoes this day. This one was the most violent of the lot. It ended up being rated an EF3. And so this is a really good example of this tornado does not look like much. Right here, it's just a funnel. You can see the rain curtains wrapping around from left to right in the foreground or between me and the tornado. That grass is just going straight into the tornado, so we know there's really good inflow. But to me, this is just a funnel cloud. I actually didn't know it was on the ground at this stage. It's one of those cases that it is on the ground. It's making contact, but the funnel's not going all the way to the ground. And by this stage, it actually had been on the ground for nearly 10 minutes. I only found that out later in the damage survey. They put it on the ground long before I even started filming. And in the video here, I'm saying it's about touchdown. Right here, we've actually got it just in the middle here, starting to get a proper tornado coming down. It's roaring, it's loud. Right now, I need to be going, and this was my mistake. Because I wasn't really contemplating or processing what was actually happening. It was moving so fast. I said nearly 100 kilometers an hour, fast moving day, dangerous day. And now you can start to see this RFDs kind of cut across. You get a shot of my partner's legs because she was freaking out. She had to put the window up. Trees starting to go right in front of me here. It's hanging on for dear life. RFD's now hitting us. It's hitting up the front of the car. It's coming around left to right, starting to rip the bonnet off the car, but it doesn't, which was fantastic. Tornadoes in the field there. It's just back here. Close range tornado, multi-vortex. So there's multiple vortices wrapping around the actual tornadic circulation. These power poles go, these trees go, all that gets ripped out. It's just shredded. Right here, this is what we call a 0 meter. We're 0 meters away from the tornado. The outskirts of it are actually starting to hit us. Some of these little tendrils are starting to come onto us. Funnel has come down a fair bit more now, just up here. This is a funnel halfway to the ground, 3/4 of the way to the ground, but it is clearly on the ground. Yeah, that's ears popped. That's always a classic sign of a tornado in progress, because they have such a low pressure drop. Their pressure just drops like 100 millibars in the space of what could be 50 meters. Power lines down. That was more from the RFD. You can see here they're bent on the side. Our goal is just to get out here, and then yeah, tornado keeps condensing behind us. We end up about here, just as the video finished. We actually turned around and went back up behind the tornado. It leveled the house behind us from where we were originally sitting, completely leveled. That's where it's got part of its EF3. It was EF3 rated right there. So that means we're looking at winds of 110, 130 miles an hour, somewhere around that range. And then later on, that storm actually became, I'll get a quick photo up. It became one of the most photogenic storms of the season. And you know, that's we were close. We would have loved to have been probably one county back and gotten a view of this tornado. That's from my mate Aaron Rigsby, phenomenal chaser, and he was actually out with the Unspeakable crew that day from YouTube that have like, I don't know, 75 million viewers or 75 million subscribers or whatever. They were taking them out. These are the views. That tornado that we just intercepted became that violent tornado, as you can see by the damage there. We actually did get the start of the Greenfield tornado. Reed Timmer and the guys did get a better view of it. But yeah, one of those crazy days. We saw 5 tornadoes in 21 minutes. And I think all of them were a story. The first one was in Red Oak. We got a distant view of it. It was one of those days where I tried to be proactive. You always want to try and be proactive, not reactive with storms, because at the end of the day, if you're reacting to a storm, you're actually kind of behind the 8 ball.
Yeah.
And we were in this general area where we're getting this tornado right now, and a storm started showing the signs of being tornadic, and we just flew straight back down the highway. Got a distant view of this tornado at Red Oak, EF1, and then it's kind of like, okay, next storm. And it was one of those days, it's just next storm, next storm, next storm. You've got 5-10 minutes of the storm, and you have to get to the next one, because the next one's going to produce, and the next one's going to produce. Wow. So we end up getting this one next, and we don't have the vision of us going back up the road. So back where we were at the start here, we're right at the edge of this bridge. So we've got a bridge coming across us, which goes obviously left, which we turn down, or back right. If you go back right, it then goes, so that's going north, and then we've got an east road, and that's where we followed the tornado's damage. As we got on that east road, I'm actually sitting here processing. I'm messaging our team like, yeah, we're okay. We've been hit, we're okay. And kind of processing some content. I didn't obviously want to get anything up. We're still in chase mode. And as we go east, my partner's actually like, we're parked on the side of the road safely, just letting cars past us. They're still chasing. I'm taking 5 minutes. She goes, is that another tornado? I'm like, probably. I just subconsciously just said probably, because it was one of those days. And I looked up, and there actually was. There was a tornado right in front of us crossing the road, and you got all these cars just stopping. And then that one went out from the field and became an EF2, EF3. And then we were like, holy shit, like that's mind-blowing. It sounded like 3 tornadoes in about 8 minutes or something, and it felt like 2 hours. What's this? This is a 2-minute 40 video. It felt like 20 minutes, because everything, it's playing in slow motion for you. But it's not, you're just doing 1,000 things at once.
Yeah, forget it.
And we ended up getting that tornado, let it go. It was actually going into a really crappy chase area, because Iowa roads are quite poor for chasing. They're only 50 miles an hour. There's a lot of hills, a lot of trees, and it was going to a pretty poor section. This one we could have kept up with for a little bit if we were more on our game with it. And as we let that one go, we then get what became the Greenfield tornado. We got that at Nottoway, which was right on the highway. Greenfield was the next town north. And again, it went from this nothing, real mediocre, like, oh, we're counting it because it's a statistic kind of thing. It was one of those stat padding tornadoes. Next minute, it goes from kind of like this one, where you can see here we've got barely a funnel on the screen to what I showed you before with that big meaty tube just coming down and eating the ground. It did the same thing. It was just this real tame, I wouldn't even call it an EF0. It's probably an EFU tornado where it's unrated because it's not actually doing anything. And it crossed the road in front of us, struggled to keep up with a fast moving day. And 10 minutes later, it's producing the fastest winds ever recorded on Earth. It's just at what was it, 318 miles an hour, so just over 500 kilometers an hour. We're then processing that, where it's like we're watching radar, and there's just these little what we call gate-to-gate couplets, where it's where the outflow or outbound and inbound winds on the radar create what we call a couplet. That's the tornado, or what should be the tornado. Not all the time it is a tornado. On this day, everything was a tornado.
Yeah.
And we're kind of processing that. We're going through rain and hail. We don't know what the next step is because it kind of started getting messy. And we actually got stopped at construction work. And a tornado just happened to run straight over the top of us. It wasn't even warned at the time. We just watched all the trees get sucked out, sucked out of the ground, came across. It didn't even knock over the stoplight for the traffic stop. Car in front of us, they shook a bit, we shook a bit. Car behind us just tilted a little bit on the road, and it was gone. I don't even think it properly touched down. Like, obviously it's on the ground if it's hitting us, but it's probably exactly what you're looking at right now, just it didn't go to that next level.
Yeah.
So that's one of the crazy days. Some of the craziest structure I've ever seen in my life. And we go there for this sort of stuff. This is in Nebraska, June 8th, I think it was, June 7, June 8. Most storm chasers are pretty good with dates of storms. Don't get me to remember anything else. Don't get me to remember phone numbers, but I can tell you where I was and what I was doing on every storm that I've ever chased. And I won't be able to remember them all straight up, but show me a photo and I can tell you. Crazy storm day, started up in the sandhills of Nebraska. It was one of those days like, okay, if we can get on a pre-storm, we get a tornado, cool. Fantastic. That's a win for the day. We're out chasing, we're just having some fun. No stress, just chill. We pull up through, I forget what the town was. It was real, like, it's one of those towns that has like 4 houses and a gas station. And we pulled past the gas station. We actually felt like we were a bit late that day. And you just see that the gas station, it's got 60 cars in it, and they're all chasers because it's one road into the storm, and this was the only storm going on. And it was pretty. It started out pretty, and next minute we were playing in the hail. We're watching for tornadoes and stuff. It's one of those days. It wasn't even this storm. It was another. We got 3 storms that day. The first one, it just did this, and it looked really pretty too. It went back towards the highway. We stayed with it on some farm roads. It produced some hail, produced some rain. Hail wasn't even that big. We were like, cool, what's next? This storm, this was the second storm, the one I'm showing, and it started out to the west, and obviously with storm stuff, your horizon gets blocked, your views get blocked because everything's low, it's dark, it's grungy. That was happening with the storm we're on. This one we could see towering over the top of it about 50 miles west of us. We could actually see the structure on the front of it, and I just went, go, 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 go. And we just raced back down that highway, met up with some tour friends. The guys at Extreme Tornado Tours were already on this storm. They ditched this one, the first one, quite early, and they were on this one, and it was pretty. It was kind of like that one I showed on the phone before. Big shelf cloud on the front, bit what we call meaty. It had a lot of meat and depth to it. It wasn't, spindly. It didn't look weak. It looked like it had a lot of, if it hit you, it's going to hit you. And it was doing fine. It didn't look tornadic. It actually ended up producing a tornado really randomly. I think it was a bit of a storm interaction. But this one, I've got a second photo too. This photo here was actually first.
Oh my God.
And we're flogging it down the highway.
Visualize it, mate. Full screen.
It was producing a ton of hail. It's actually what we now class as the day that I saved the skunks. We're actually, from here on this road, we flog it back down the road. We're trying to stay in front of it. It's got all this crazy structure on the front edge of it. And we're pulling through, and we got to this intersection. You can either keep going straight along this road or take a turn. We took the turn. As we took the turn, we're just flying along, and we noticed animals and stuff. And we were looking out for deer and whatever. And we saw a black and white thing on the side of the road, and I'm like, hang on. I pulled over. I actually did a U-turn in virtually in the middle of the storm, and these two little baby skunks. I'll actually find a photo for you. But it's one of those. That's what kind of made the story for us. And this thing was just producing a ton of hail. We kept going in and out of the hail all day because you can see that big dark green core in there, or the aqua core, even more so on this one. And this is my favorite shot. I want to get this done up on a wall. And it was such a tight hail core that you could sit in it for 5 minutes and then drive out, and there wasn't even rain. It went from nothing to a hail avalanche in the space. Like, you could watch it coming up the road, and when you were in it, it was filling the road with hail. So it was like an ice skating rink, and that was so fun. Where am I? Feb 2024, June. I need to get to June. Okay, cool. Yeah. So that's our little skunk friend. And unfortunately, look, it's sad. Its mum, or their mum, got hit, probably by a car. She was unfortunately deceased on the side of the road, and found this little guy, gave him to, or two of them actually, gave them to some locals that pulled up, and they took them to a vet. But again, that's what makes that chase. And the structure that you see over there is phenomenal. There are so many days that I haven't chased over there that produced like structure of the year. I remember several years ago, I think it was the 2019 season, we got to the end of our trip, and we're just driving around through Missouri and stuff, meeting up with some friends, and happened to be there was a storm day, but we were at the end of the trip. Could have chased it, should have chased it in the end. And this little lone storm developed at Douglas, Kansas, just outside of Wichita. And I just remember seeing this spam through social media of this just stupid structure. It was like a wedding cake. It was about 8 tiers high. And it's just this thing that was just sitting there all by itself. You got blue sky all around it. Those sort of days are the days that, and what I just showed there with the green monster through Nebraska, they're the days that keep you addicted. You're only as good as your last chase. That's the general saying. But at the end of the day, we just want to keep filling the portfolio with structure like that. Tornadoes like the El Dorado one that I showed, and Villisca, Carbon, Green Field, like all of those are in people's portfolios forever. They're the ones that in 10 years' time we will be posting the 10-year anniversary of those. And obviously, it's not to highlight the destruction they cause, because all these storms do cause destruction, but they're memories. They're successful chases. There are a lot of hard work that people don't realize. Like you see those two photos, but you didn't see the 3 hours before it, where we were just trying to get in front of it and get a good view. We're stressing, we're struggling about which storm to be on. Do we give up the one we're on for possibly a better one, or do we keep going? And we actually then we ditched that one in the end, because it did the same. It kind of petered out and died a bit, and got onto a new storm back down the highway. It was right on the highway, and very, very short chase, because we were in the gas station with Extreme Tornado Tours, and I actually turned to Trey and Max, two of my friends who were running the tours that day. I just go, "What are you guys doing with this?" They're like, "Nothing." I was like, "Cool, I'm not doing anything either." And then, because they're like, "Well, we're about to hit with softballs," and I said, "That's what I figured." I'm like, I'll just see if they wanted to go south or something and try and stay in front of it. But the next day was in Colorado, so the logic was, see, we're always looking ahead to it. There's so much processing going on in your head about, no, I'm not just focusing on today's storm, but I got to make sure that this storm doesn't take me 3 hours away from tomorrow.
Yeah.
Because that's now 3 extra hours that I need to drive.
100%.
And that does become taxing on you. And that's why I said, like, we only chase about 40 days out of the 80. And that's because we do have travel days that we do have to drive like 16 hours to get into position for the next day, which could be a bigger day. Some days they're just fine and sunny. You're not giving up anything. Some days we're giving up, semi-decent storm days to make that travel. Other days you just go stuff it and you chase both. And they're the crazy days. But in Yuma, we were actually um, we were sitting in the bank because we're like, this place can get leveled by hail. It's a rare thing to think that. Like you think a town's gonna get destroyed by tornadoes and stuff. This thing was going to absolutely destroy this town, and we're just filming it. We're standing out, we're getting hit with hailstones. I'm just trying to duck behind the car, just making sure I don't get hit with a softball or something. Window shatters in front of me from the bank. That was one of the streets. We couldn't even drive down that. We were trying to push hail out of the way or drive behind cars to get hail out of the way. So no, look, I love my hail. I love all kinds of crazy weather, and that's definitely one of the top hail storms that I've chased.
So mate, can we lead into Australia? Because this is so awesome.
Yeah.
How come Australia doesn't get those kind of tornadoes? Could you explain to me, or is that a misnomer? Is that
No,
like,
so we definitely do get tornadoes. We get I don't know what exactly our rank is. I know we're probably behind places. Well, obviously America, Canada, Mexico are ahead of us. There are some European countries. I know Argentina as well is ahead of us. That's a unique South American country that actually has the right environment for tornadoes with their topography and everything. I think Germany, Italy, they're ahead of us or around us at least. But we're in the top 10. We're probably somewhere around the sixth or seventh rank for tornadoes per year.
Mhm.
And there are two parts to it. One is our population. Our population is 90% on the coast, or within like 200 kilometers of the coast. There are so many storms that I have zero doubt produce tornadoes in the middle of Australia that nobody can see. There is nothing around them. I actually posted about one of them on my page back towards the start of our season, maybe in October or September. The guys at CSIRO were doing some satellite analysis, or it worked out that a random person found it first, and then CSIRO jumped on top and actually started confirming and analyzing it. There's a random scar out in the WA-SA border that is very clearly a tornado that is nowhere near a town. And it's one of those, we've been able to confirm it with satellite. You'd actually see the vortices that have happened in the dust. I'll actually see if I'll bring it up. I'll bring it up and I can show you because I know where to find it.
I got it. Stand by. Okay.
There we go. So,
Oh, hang on. I got it.
have you got it?
Is that him?
I can't see your screen.
Oh, you can't. Hang on.
No.
Okay. I think. Oh yeah, you're still sharing. Stand by. All right. So I'm going to stop your share,
Yep.
and I'm going to start my share. Stand by.
Yep, that's the one. That's the one. Yeah, you can actually see there where it's obviously started under the Nine News logo. It's traveled southeast, and then it's actually, if you on Google Maps, you can actually zoom right into where it's done that little loop, and you can physically see the loop. And then obviously it's gone. That's what we call an occlusion. And then the tornado has obviously then gone back to the northeast, and it runs over some little lake or something, and you can actually see on Google Maps some of the tree damage in that little area, or brush damage, I guess you'd call it. But again, that is a perfect example of tornadoes that happen in Australia that no one sees. They happen all the time. I have no doubt you could probably find other scars if you wanted to spend the next 2 months searching every molecule of dust that's out there on Google Maps. Yeah, these tornadoes happen all the time. I'm sure I've seen storms out in the middle of Western Queensland that are 200 kilometers, 150 kilometers from a town, and there is no doubt in my mind there is something happening under that storm. Whether it is producing a tornado or not is just a guess. But that's part of the reason. If we had the storm spotter network that America has, and the population or how our topography is spread, or sorry, how our population is spread. If we spread much more through inland Australia, we'd have so many more tornado reports. And we're not just talking dust devils and stuff. Like I know some people call that one on the WASA border a dust devil. That's very clearly not. That has very clearly scoured the ground. Dust devils and stuff, or what some Australians call willy willies, they don't scour the ground like that. That's
Ooh.
See, like right there, you can see the I forget what the exact term is, but the cylindrical or colloquial, or whatever it is, vortices.
Yeah.
You can see how it was spinning through the dust. It's a phenomenal find, really. I know a lot of Americans are actually crazy about that find, and I think it just started from some random guy searching through Google, and he happened to come across it and was wondering, and then CSIRO did their analysis and did work out that going back through obviously the satellites that they've saved, they kind of worked out the date, and it was mid-November 2 years ago, or I guess 2022 now, 3 years ago. Mid-November, they actually had satellite images before and after that, and they worked out the rough date, and there was actually a storm system that went through there. So you kind of put two and two together, something happened. And then I guess the second part too is that our favorable environment is so close to the coast. Like, yeah, we get tornadoes out in the middle of nowhere. That those tornadoes would be supercells that are latching onto boundaries and doing their thing, localized shear, maybe some frontal stuff, especially through winter through the southern states, because obviously southwest WA and kind of SA and Victoria have their tornado season through the winter months where they're getting constant cold fronts. But part of it is that our favorable environment is so close to the coast. If we had another 200 or 300, 400 kilometers of coast available, land available to us that goes way further east, we would still get the storms developing around the Darling Downs, inland New South Wales, the central highlands of Queensland. We'd still get all the storms developing through there, but they've now got an extra 6 hours to do their thing.
Yeah.
Most storms in America don't produce a tornado straight away. They actually do what we call cycle. And it's where these storms go through stages of intensifying, then they weaken, then they go again, and it's kind of like revs on a car. It goes up and then it comes back a little bit, it goes up and it comes back. That's what these storms do. And in America, we can sometimes sit on a storm for 6 hours and it hasn't produced anything. I still remember one of my favorite first days of chasing America was the Canadian Texas May 27 tornado, where we got on into position Texas Panhandle at about 1:32 p.m. and we sat on that storm for about 3 hours and it couldn't even produce a funnel. And then next minute we get 5 tornadoes in 1 hour, with the bigger one lasting the longest time, and then the rest of them were just these little spindly ones. They mainly just did damage to oil rigs. But yeah, that's an example that storm went through so many stages of just cycling and trying. They're trying to produce these tornadoes because that's the environment they're in. So if we had more coastline to work with Australia, we would see so many more. And of course, the population side of things too, that you got to be able to report them. There's not many people living in the middle of Australia, and a lot of these storms, if they're not hitting a town, they're just another storm.
Hey, bro, mate, we've been talking for 2 hours.
I know it's as I said,
Three.
You talk about stuff forever because
3 hours.
It's amazing adventure with storm chasing. And if I can encourage anyone to do anything that does end up listening to this,
yeah,
is if severe storms and tornadoes are a bucket list item, which it is for a lot of people, book a tour. Just You can't book this year. You probably can't even book next year because it pretty much sold out for most tour companies. They sell it really fast. You can get in early for 2027 probably. Do it because everything I'm talking about is what you experience. You experience the late nights, you experience the early mornings, and they suck at the time, but they become stories at the end.
Yeah.
Like May 21st for us, the night we got 2 hours of sleep, chased feet deep hail in Colorado the day before, only to get 5 tornadoes in 21 minutes the next day, including the fastest one on Earth. That's a story. To live some of these stories that I've been saying, and this is just like the tip of the iceberg. I could talk about so many stories. Like, I mean, the day I was struck by lightning in Texas, I chasing a storm, watching it for a tornado, and we're on the outskirts of this random town in Texas, and it was just gone night, and watching 4 areas for a funnel. They just kept putting these little lowerings down, and I was standing on the car. My mate was standing next to me, and I got struck. We actually both got struck, but I got struck first. I actually said to him, "What was that?" And he goes, "I think we were just struck." I said, "It felt like a baseball hit my ankle, and it was the inside of inside of my left ankle." I had a scar there for about 8 years, and it's only just recently faded. It was just above the ankle where the lightning came out, and I watched the lightning go into the ground, but I didn't work out. It was this intense pain. It was like someone pegged a baseball at me, and I thought we got hit with hail, but it's like not even raining on us. It's a bolt had come out and gone through me and him. Luckily, we were okay. We actually didn't go to hospital. Probably should have, but we didn't. It's I was sick that night. I had nausea. I had jelly legs. I had muscle cramps. I had a lot of these common themes, and I've spoken to medical people since that day. I mean, Katie is a paramedic. She knows her stuff. General consensus is it's gone through because I was holding onto the car. I was just trying to get a bit of an elevated view,
Okay.
standing on the basically the seat of the car, and I'm holding on. And the general consensus is gone through my arm, down, and then gone down the side of my body, through my leg, out my ankle,
Thank
and
God.
missed all vital organs.
Yeah.
Very lucky. It's one of those stories I tell people, but it's not like I didn't nearly die. It didn't feel like that. I mean, on paper, I probably nearly died, but I got very, very lucky, and in a very, very minor case of everything that the nausea. I didn't even really vomit. I just had that nausea feeling. I had jelly legs where we stopped a couple of times on the way home, and we went to get out and just like make sure we're okay and stuff. And you walk around and collapse just because like it's not anything to do with anything else. It's just my legs were struggling to be legs. um, and but yeah, like that's a story. And then I've got the photos.
Yeah. And you got the happy snaps to prove it.
I've got photos from Bow Desert where I almost got struck about 15, 20 times in about a 10-minute period.
Yeah.
We had a big supercell coming up from northern New South Wales. It came through us and was ridiculous. I'm just quickly trying to see if I've got the photos.
Happy snaps.
Because I've got a fair few photos from that day. So I had these bolts just raining down around me for a good 30 minutes as that storm came up. This is just on the outskirts of the Bow Desert Racecourse. Along that road, every second tree was down. There was hail like that, of just baseball-sized hail sitting on the side of the road. So we missed the call by a little bit, just a little bit, but it was enough. But this thing was just producing lightning beyond belief. It almost produced a tornado actually on the south side of Brisbane after this. It racked up really quickly and tried its best, but in that same process of racking up, it actually kind of killed itself off.
I've just got to quickly break, and we'll go back to it in a moment. We're on the downhill run, but Jabiru has just, I've had some people who are reporting that they've been struck by lightning as well. So, Jabiru, you got to tell us what that's like. So please make sure you comment. You're struck by lightning and you're here to say you've been thunderstruck. Anyway, back to the show. Thank you so much for sharing that.
So yeah, one of those crazy days, and even one of my famous days, it was 46 degrees on the north side of Brisbane. It was like January 4th or 6th or something, about, I don't know, 2016. We had a 40-degree day the day before. We had 46 this day. And then the next day we had about 38 and just stupid humidity. And we got the most insane lightning storm come through that night. And I stood up on the hill north of just above our house. We had this hill going out the back, chase or anything, but I went up there, and the house that I was standing in front of actually got struck by lightning, and the wind from the storm actually blew all the heat onto me. It went from cold from the storm to burning hot in about 1 second.
Mm.
And then about 5 seconds later, it was back to being cold. I actually remember running over one of the houses, and because the three little girls, they were with their dad out in the front, and they were watching, and the gunshot sound was deafening. Like my ears were ringing and stuff.
Yeah.
And they were screaming, and I just ran over them to make sure they were okay. Came back to the house to see if anyone was in the house at the time. They're actually out shopping, I found out, because they came back a bit later, and it blew out some tiles in their house, and then another bolt actually came down and struck a tree behind their house, and that tree was on fire for about 2 hours.
That is such a cool and interesting story. And Jabru, one of my listeners, fantastic to hear from you, Jabru. As always, well, I'm going to get you on one day. She has been struck by lightning. So it's so cool to hear these other stories of the listeners, that participation, of you liking, commenting, and sharing, and telling me of your stuff as well. And Jabru is actually very closely connected to nature and the environment. So there we go. Look, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed hearing from Thomas Hinterdorfer, who is like this strange mix of meteorologist, super intelligent guy, super nerd, and superhero, about his life story chasing tornadoes, extreme weather events. If you want to find out more, there is a website that you can go to that I've already put in the comments there. That's higginsstormchasing.com.au. Again, higginsstormchasing.com.au. And thank you so much to my guests. Thank you for those who liked and shared. I'll see you all next time we're on Northern Vibe. Fantastic.